L. Ron Howard wanted to start a cult.
L. Ron Hubbard.
That's 100% L. Ron Howard.
It's 100% L. Ron Hubbard.
It's 100% L. Ron Howard. 100%. What you gotta do is break him down. You gotta L. Ron Howard him.
That's not a thing. So much about Scientology except the guy's name. That's the easiest part of it. What was it? Would he invent Scientology like after he directed Backdraft in Apollo 13?
No, that was Ron Howard. I'm talking about L. Ron Howard.
Oh my God.
Guys, can we please stop?
We are talking about L. Ron Howard. How you doing, Krista? Good to see you again.
I'm good. How are you, Sterling?
Not bad, not bad, not bad. We had an exciting last week, as you know, with the Super Bowl here, or the Taylor Swift concert with the football game at halftime, whatever people want to call it. But I'm glad to be back on with you.
Yeah, likewise. I think it's great. You know, watching your intro video makes me laugh every time. And I think to myself, my favorite curse word is Mother Hubbard. Have I ever told you this?
No, I did not know that. I did not know that.
I think it's like a friendly, curse word. So
yeah.
I think we have an echo again.
Do we?
Do we?
No, I don't think so. Well,
No?
we'll let chat. Let us know if you hear a little bit of echo. We're live. Refresh if no sound video. I think we're good. Sounding bit Kermit Sterling.
That's me.
Oh, you know why? Oh, I wonder here.
What?
Did I set?
While you do that,
yes.
While you do that, I'll tell you about this Mother Hubbard. So Mother Hubbard's like a kid-friendly curse word, and I've been saying it. I think my whole family says it. I have 2 older sisters, my mom, my dad. Everybody said Mother Hubbard as kind of like a kid-friendly, and it wasn't until chatting with all you SPTV folk that I realized the hilarity in the fact that I say Mother Hubbard.
Right.
Obviously, it's a euphemism for.
Yes.
I'm sure everybody gets that, but yeah, I find that really funny. So every time I watch your intro video and I hear them say, Ron Hubbard, Ron Howard, it just makes me laugh.
It's funny to you in that way. That's interesting. Quickly, guys, my voice better. I was messing around with sound effects before, and I hit the voice alteration, voice disguise. So hopefully it's better now. Let me know, please. I forgot that it was.
I don't hear an echo anymore, so I think on my end.
Okay. Yeah. We'll just wait. Better sound. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys mentioned. I would have gone the entire video with that voice. That would have been embarrassing. Yeah, no, guys, it's one of the functions. I don't even know why it's on this device, the audio processor. I don't know why you'd want to do voice disguise unless you're in the witness protection program. But yes.
I mean, good for, emphasizing certain things like.
Yeah, and it was not intentional,
Howard,
guys.
Yeah. Something funny about Tom Cruise maybe or something like that would be pretty comical. But Sterling, you sound normal to me, so I'm looking forward to watching the live video afterwards.
Yeah, right. I gotta go listen to.
Like Kermit.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been really weird. Kermit's one of my favorite characters, by the way, so that was good.
Really?
Yeah, I love the Muppets. Okay, so here we go. We're back to it. All right. I think we were gonna pick up on some of our, I don't know if you saw the feedback. Some of the feedback last week was really cool. I think a few, as they've been now termed, never-ends.
Yes.
We're excited that this interview series kept going because your questions are quite fascinating from that point of view, rather than ex-Scientologists talking to ex-Scientologists. There's a person like you that's got, again, a lot of really good questions. And we kind of just go off the cuff and just run from there. So if you wanted to just jump right into that, let's get going. This will be fun.
I've got, we've gone through so many questions. The questions today might kind of jump all over the place, but as we talk, we'll just kind of steer into some. But I think one of the world needs to understand a little bit more, or those that aren't familiar with Scientology, is a little bit about the disconnection process. Like, this is my thought. What are the drivers of the disconnection process? Like I think I saw on a video that you had before that you had a theory that it was to move along the bridge. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I should rephrase because I'm not articulating this properly. The family members that connect, like from, let's say Aaron, for example, Aaron's wife's family, they have to choose, are they going to relinquish that relationship with Aaron, his wife, and his children, or are they going to stay? Now, maybe that is a bit muddy because they have families in Scientology as well, but let's say a hypothetical Scientologist that they're going to lose their children because their children have decided to leave Scientology, and they're going to stay. I understand that there's an indoctrination process, but do you think that there's any correlation there between their desire to continue up the bridge?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's dependent on the individual circumstances for the people. So in Aaron's case, and I believe I'm correct in saying this, but his wife's family were public Scientologists still trying to move up the bridge, still trying to progress up it. But you don't know actually. I mean, maybe he does, but we don't know how much they were doing that. Some people in Scientology, in my observation, just stick around because they've got family members in, but really aren't really trying to progress that far up and are just happy with the position they're in. They've done some of the basics. They go along there. So it is a factor sometimes. And I actually consider it quite selfish to disconnecting from your own family member just so you can get your personal spiritual freedom. I think it's a little weird in a way that's the viewpoint. But if you take my parents, for instance, that's not the case, because I know that my dad and my mom, and this being my stepmom, Barbara, who raised me, and my dad, Foster, they really haven't moved up the bridge in 30 years.
Right.
They're just doing it because they're in a high control group. And as they've stated, word for word, when they've tried to explain how I was friends with Mark Headley, I was friends with a bunch of different people that were attacking Scientology, back this conversation happened about 15 years ago. It was, well, how would you feel if we were a Jewish family and you were hanging out with Nazis? That's basically how they depicted my relationship with ex-Scientologists and them being in the C organization, that would be, they're the Jewish family and I'm hanging out with Nazis. Of course they would disconnect from me, which was kind of an absurd statement and so weird.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to a certain extent, it kind of shows the power of the vision that's there. The carrot of moving up. They want to achieve what full. They want to become fully clear, and the power of that desire could overrule or just strike out.
Yeah.
That familial relationship that you have with family members. I think that's incredibly fascinating. So on a personal level, Sterling, do you have any form or any way to communicate with Foster and Barbara at all?
No, not at this moment. No, as I had mentioned before, I'd seen them. My brother and I, my little brother, Nathan and I had seen them at a celebration of life last year. And it was a weird interaction. I know, believe it or not, if you could just gauge who was more accepting, and there was a little bit of that love still there, I would say my stepmom Barbara was a little more open. My dad Foster was a little cold and direct, and there's a whole story behind. Like we were all shocked as a family that they even showed up to that.
Right. Well, yeah.
Being that Nathan and I were going to be there, and there's quite a bit of long story, which I'm not going to into it, but it was my family, Foster's family, that put their foot down and said, we're not, well, first of all, it was a celebration of life of my uncle. So the fact that there's even a discussion about who's showing up and who wouldn't show up if this person showed up is ridiculous, because it was about my uncle.
Right.
And so I, at one point, had said on the phone, I'm going to look at, if it creates any problem for the family, I won't show up. If you guys want Foster there, I won't, my dad, I won't show up, because I'm not making this about me, Scientology, and Foster. This is not fair, because we're celebrating someone else's life. And I believe at that point, it was like, hey, we'll take you over, because you're not throwing Scientology in the mix. And I guess at some point, Foster and Barbara decided that to save face, and that it wouldn't be so bad if they showed up with us there, because they could control the narrative sort of, and it would look really bad for them not to show up. For my uncle, who was just loved by everybody in the family. He was the uncle that always laughed and smiled and was always in a good mood, and he was always jovial. So, no one didn't like him, and so it was part of I think they just showed up because it would look so bad if they didn't. So bad if they didn't. Which again, I was surprised about. Very surprised that happened.
Now, would they need to get? Obviously, they'd have to get permission to leave the Int base or Gold base. I'm not sure where are they located?
No, they're located in PAC now.
Okay, so would they? Who would sign off on the approval for them to go? Because they do need to get approval, right?
Yeah. You know, in this day and age, I'm assuming it would be the ethics department or the HCO department, Hubbard Communications Office, would have some relation to that. Again, I would love to have been a fly on the wall to hear how that conversation went,
Yeah,
how they could justify getting out to go do that. But again, you know, I'm also not very threatening. Neither was Nathan. And I actually I had dinner with my little brother last night, and we spoke about that. And I had assumed the entire time we were there, Nathan was having a conversation about things he wanted to, but then he told me that that really the conversation was just kind of like good roads, fair weather, and there was nothing really happening in depth there. And it was, you know, and he was a little disappointed about that, but also happy to see, you know, disconnection is so nuanced because, you know, some cases, good, you're not with your parents who may have been abusive or nasty or just horrible people, for instance Reese's father, but in this particular case, just, you know, my parents are in a cult, they're brainwashed, they're not perfect, but I know they tried, and so losing them in my life does affect me, and does affect my little brother for sure, because I know there's love that's been lost there, you know. So it's an interesting thing. It's different for every person, but the fact that I got to see them is interesting. But really, for them in the Sea Org, it's really about their mission to clear planet Earth is why they couldn't talk to us, not about them moving up the bridge. Whereas Aaron's wife's family is more probably about moving up the bridge and also just the control factor. I mean, a lot of times, even if the person wasn't moving up the bridge and they weren't even doing Scientology, but they were identified as a Scientologist, then they would still be like, you can't talk to them because they go out of their way. They go out of their way to cut all ties. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, you know, in terms of even when you consider declaring somebody an SP. Like, I haven't personally chatted with Kelly Copter, but I've watched videos, and her story is wild to me. One that I think everybody needs to know about, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she was said to be an SP at age 6 or something.
Yeah, I've heard her say that. Yep.
So what fascinates me is who made that decision, who made that call.
Right.
How could a 6-year-old be declared an SP? It just, I'm baffled, Sterling. Like, I wish I understood a little bit more about the fundamentals of how they I mean, I understand if somebody leaves Scientology and then they go and do a media tour, or they write a book, or they speak negatively about, but I'm starting to notice that there are people that are declared SPs just for no longer practicing Scientology anymore.
Yes.
Versus speaking out about them. So where do they draw that line, and who makes that decision? Is that David Miscavige, or
the
individual ethics officer of the particular or
I think, you know, and it's a good question. I think it's very arbitrary at this point. It's very arbitrary. And I can only give you an example of something that happened in my family, particularly, and why I say it's arbitrary. First, as far as I know, in most cases, they no longer publish suppressive person declares because it just looks so bad. I've talked on my channel about my story where when they declared me the first time, they had nothing to really talk about because I really hadn't done anything that violated any of their rules except for going to a baseball game on the 4th of July. And so the main part of my declare was that I never wanted to be in the Sea organization. And I think it was I was only in the Sea organization for my own benefit, which I'm still trying to figure out what that benefit was. I have not yet. And that I left without permission, AWOL to a baseball game, which I, by the way, came back to at the end of the day, and you know, continued to sleep underneath the staircase in the blue building. But it's very arbitrary. I've had family members declared that you go, why are they declared? And then I've had family members that weren't declared for some reason, or at least not published. It is very arbitrary. I don't think Dave Miscavige ever says declare that guy. I think he says the guy's a suppressive, and then the machine just starts working from there. But there are certain rules for particularly people that leave the international base, Golden Air Productions, where if you do leave there and you do leave the Sea organization, I believe it's supposed to be an automatic declare.
Right.
And Scientology, being the most ethical group in the world, if they don't have anything on you, they'll just make stuff up to make that make sense because you're wanting to leave. It couldn't be about the abuse. It couldn't be about the slave labor. It couldn't be about anything like that. It just must be that you did something wrong, which is obviously very insane and stupid. Yeah.
Well, and that's a bit fresh too, because obviously we've talked about this before. David Miscavige is probably he's broken every single one of those, stipulations about what is going to get somebody declared. So, I mean, David Miscavige is the ultimate SP, really, for the things that he's done. So it's interesting how arbitrary it's become. One of the other things that I can't remember where I saw it, but it was definitely in passing. And I know that they don't give out what's called the golden rod anymore. That's a document printed on that golden rod paper that says that you're officially declared.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but do you have one of those? Did you get one?
No,
Okay.
I only saw the one that was issued originally when I was declared, and I never got a copy of that. I don't know if that had to do because I was from Golden Era Productions or not. I'm not sure. But real quickly, Chris, if you don't mind, sorry, it's a little bit choppy. Your words are skipping a little bit when you talk. Would you mind? Yeah. Would you mind just maybe unplugging your mic and plugging it back in, or something?
Is that better? Is that better?
Well, it's when you talk a little bit longer. So go ahead and
How's that?
It sounds good. We'll monitor it as it goes, guys. We apologize for that.
I think it's because I'm directly connected, but I also had my Wi-Fi on, so I've just turned my Wi-Fi off. So I bet that's what the issue was.
Oh, you sound much better. Yes.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Thank you, chat, for mentioning that. We appreciate that.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
So, SP declares really are an interesting subject, and they really are so arbitrary. So no, I never got my goldenrod. I'm always surprised when people did get goldenrod. I believe Mike Brown got a copy of his. I believe Mark Headley got a copy of his. So it was always surprising to me when they did. But I did not. I did not get my SP declare.
Well, my question was, and I don't know where I heard this, but the language that's written on the goldenrod almost strikes out any form of liability that the suppressive person has for sharing documents or talking, like any sorry, I should rephrase. Any contracts, any written contract that you have done previously with Scientology, the goldenrod form, the language that's in it negates any conflict of interest or non-disclosure, if you will, because I believe that the document, like you guys have to sign paperwork, the billion-year contract, there's a non-disclosure to a certain extent that's worked right into that they're able to, with their litigious behavior, they're able to hold people accountable to not speak out against Scientology. And the goldenrod language actually negated that NDA.
Really? I mean, negated it, meaning made it so it's not cannot be used against the person leaving anymore because of how it was written?
Yeah. It's almost it's almost like, I wish I could remember the language. I wish I wrote it down, and maybe the next time that we chat, Sterling, I'll come with the words, because it was, and it was like they shot themselves in the foot a little bit. The way that they worded it was almost like they were protecting themselves. Like, God, I wish I could give you the language, and I'm sure the chat is probably blowing up because maybe they already know. But there was the way that it was worded was in protection of Scientology, like, you are no longer a part of our organization. Any agreements that you had with Scientology are now null and void. I'm paraphrasing the words here, but it was essentially along those lines. And with that comes, like, they just put it in black and white that any non-disclosure agreement is also null and void as well. So I do wonder if that was maybe the driver for no longer giving out the actual written document, because, a lawyer could make a heyday with that, with the language, if it's not worded properly.
Yeah, that might be it. And it might also partially be that they were, so insane and so crazy in a way that they didn't make sense. They were just a rambling of things that happened. And if you later on speak out against them and they have that document to show, you kind of have to stick to that original lie or whatever it may be. It's a strange thing. I'm kind of sure they're not doing that publicly anymore. That now they just do whisper campaigns, or at least I've seen whisper campaigns.
What's a whisper campaign?
So I'll give you a perfect example of this. When I left and I was on Facebook, and even though I had not spoken out, I was still friends with people my peers, people that I knew there. Of course, this was my group that I grew up with. They had certain little people that were ex-Scientologists that were still goody two-shoes, and trying to still impress and be part of the group, even though they left it because it was horrible, which never made sense to me. And they would go around contacting people and say, oh, don't talk to Sterling. He's talking to SPs or whatever it may be, or he's an SP or stuff like that. So they would try to cut connections using these little moles all over the place. And yeah, create issues that way, which I dealt with several times because I had friends, they would always call me and tell me if that happened. I'd be like, oh, interesting. Okay. Not to mention family members. Yeah.
These were people that were inside and under the radar?
These were people that were inside that left not under the radar, but are still talking to OSA, or OSA's using them as a tool to, so that it doesn't look like OSA's doing it, disconnect everyone that's left, and make it so that people can't get together by either shaming them or just saying don't talk to them on social media. A lot of the 1984 thought police and I always forget what the kids' names are in 1984, the ones that report.
I can't remember either.
Yeah. Please, in the chat, you guys will know. I always forget the name of the people that report on the adults. But yeah, that's basically what it was. And it's funny because the main girl that was doing it against me, calling people, I didn't even know. I met her once.
That's fascinating story. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah. It was
How
crazy.
did that make you feel?
A little angry, because I actually, besides just being friends and connecting people up, I was always into the, when I connected up with Mark, Headley, and Claire again, and I knew people that were outside struggling or having an issue or needed someone to talk to, I would kind of, hey, why don't you talk to Mark and Claire? Or why doesn't Mark and Claire talk to Jackson, or whoever I was connecting up? That was kind of what I was contributing to it, getting people back in touch with friends and people that as a support group. That's just what I did. I wasn't speaking out, but the campaign against me was pretty vile on social media. Now, they wouldn't do posts. Again, this is all, when I say whispering, this is all, IMs and direct messages. Don't talk to Sterling. And of course, I only know about them because people would contact me. But then there was a few things, like I think someone in the church once said, oh yeah, Sterling's in Germany protesting against Scientology. And I was like, first of all, I'd never been outside the country at that point. I would have loved to have gone to Germany, but I had never done that. And so I was like, wow, like I hadn't done anything and they're already doing it, which was kind of, that annoyed me, because it's like, okay, well then I should probably do something if they're going to attack me anyways. But yeah.
So crazy. I have a question about, obviously most of your viewers will know about Danny Masterson and what happened, and Scientology's culpability in terms of covering up those crimes. And we know about many of the abuses that go on that get covered up. But I watched a video recently that really fascinated me, and it talked a little bit about conditions, liability, formula / amends. I don't know if I'm using the words right, where essentially if somebody, goes outside the bounds or does something that's viewed as poor form within Scientology, they can fill out this document and get a whole bunch of people to sign off that they essentially forgive them, and they're allowed back in. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? When does that get instituted? Why? How does that? I mean, that just so. Yeah. Sorry, it's a two-part question then for you, Sterling, because my second part to that question is it safe to say that Danny Masterson probably had to fill out, at least we know of 2 Scientologists. Is it 2 or is it 3 Scientologists that he SA'd? So would he have had to do one of these liability formula conditions amends forms? I'm sorry, I don't know what they're called. You'll have to tell me. No, it's
interesting. And yeah, let me, sorry, I have to do one quick text here. This is work related. There we go. Yeah, no, okay. So let's start with the ethics conditions, and then we can conject on whether he had to or not, which I seriously doubt. You did get the phrasing almost 100% correct. Good job.
Oh,
it is the ethics formulas, and it's a liability condition. And in that, you have to make up the damage to the group that you essentially offended or violated.
Right.
I've talked about this with Aaron, which is really funny. Aaron and I have quite vastly different experiences on these two things, KRs and ethics conditions. But one of the things, when I was in Scientology, that really bugged me was the ethics conditions. I thought they were absurd from day one. I couldn't get how writing down on a piece of paper this formula every time And they're applied to many things: ethics in your personal life, your interactions, but also your production and statistics as an individual Sea Org member or Scientologist. So if I were, pruning the trees, for instance, and my stat was healthy trees, and I had 2 more healthy trees than unhealthy trees, and a windstorm came in and knocked down 6 trees, and my stats were down. The idea of going and writing up a formula, let's say the emergency or danger formula, which are 2 of the formulas, and applying those exact things would change the fact that there was a windstorm the week earlier at my location, I thought was absurd. There was no connection there between the 2 things. And so, as I've mentioned before, I had formatted these on my computer so that I could just print them out over and over again, rather than having to do them, because I thought they were absurd. I just didn't understand them at all.
Is it kind of similar to just like when we were in grade school and you had to write on the chalkboard, I will not throw chalk at the teacher anymore 100 times on the chalkboard?
Except for that worked. Yeah.
Right?
That worked. Yeah. I didn't want to write my name on the chalkboard that many times.
So I guess I think perhaps in my mind, being a never writer, I assumed that this process involved serious crimes. So you're saying it could be just as generic as you didn't prune the trees properly. It's just anything that just doesn't.
Yeah. Let's imagine, and this did happen. Let's imagine up at Dave's office, which he had 2 giant pine trees up there. And let's imagine a 30-year windstorm, or the Santa Anas came in and it just ripped a branch off because it had a small tornado effect or whipping winds, which is a natural occurrence in nature. And that branch falls on a car or even just misses a table he was next to. No, absolutely. One of my deputies got assigned a lower condition just because that happened, even though the tree was perfectly pruned. And he became a liability to the group because he apparently didn't do his job good enough or couldn't foresee that this windstorm might hit it. Now, if you needed to prune a tree so that wind wouldn't affect it, it would be the ugliest tree in the world. So he's trying to keep the tree looking great at the same time as safe, but you can't control the wind. Yes, he would have to do liability. He would have to do the steps of that and then do some make up the damage, stay up all night, whatever it may be, and then get permission from all 400 staff members in his organization to rejoin the group of good people that are doing their job and working hard and that are being ethical. Insane, absolute control mechanism.
Yeah.
Just one of the stupidest parts of Scientology that is just, I don't find applicable at all. And really had a problem with it. What's that?
Sorry. What would the turnaround time be for that? Like, to get 400 signatures, I mean, obviously you've got to rectify the situation. And in Danny Masterson's case, I'm not entirely sure how he would rectify that situation, if assuming he did have to do this as well. But you're of the mind that he probably didn't have to go through this process and do
again, a lot has been said about celebrity treatment, and I don't want to speak out of place because I really was never on Celebrity Center lines. But, you can only assume from how people are treated, or from reading Leah's book, which does describe a little bit of it. Now, she talks about horrible treatment as well, but she also talks about, different parts of the celebrity thing. I don't think so. I think they wanted to keep him in line to some degree, but I don't think they would have gone to the extent of assigning him a lower condition and making him have to ask for approval to get back in the group. But I'm not sure. And even if they did, it would have been a very light version. He would not look at, when we were in Scientology in this organization, we had to go to all 400 staff members to get that signature. You would have to do it during your meal break. It was pure torture, because then you'd have to walk up to that one, gentleman or lady that did not like you, and they would take forever to read it. They would take up like 5 or 6 minutes to read it, and then they would sign no at the end and just give you the eyeball, the stare. And it was so annoying. I don't think you could talk to a single person that's left and they would have a fond memory of that particular procedure. It was so aggravating. But so I don't think Danny had to do that, but I couldn't tell you for sure. And if he did a very light version of it, where probably only had to get the signature of an MAA or maybe the president's office or something along those lines. But,
and then it begs the question too, in terms of, the drivers for them even going through these motions. Like, when thinking of like high crimes, I'm sure the terminology high crime is something totally different in Scientology. But for me, as a never-inner, like, I'm referring to one of the crimes that Danny committed versus not, cutting the tree properly and tipping over in the wind and hurting a car.
Yeah.
It begs the question why they would even go through any form of rehabilitation instead of recognizing we don't want this person in our organization. There's something wrong here. Do you think that the entire motivation is just money related? They don't want to lose that income coming in, or if it's a Sea Org member that's on staff that might have done something really bad, like
Well, Aaron's pointed out
missing
in
a
several
child.
videos. Aaron's pointed out in several videos regarding Danny Masterson, the connection, how many people he was connected to that were around the Scientology bubble or in the Scientology bubble, including Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis,
Right.
that you would not want to upset that guy, because I think they were assuming
Oh,
that
I see.
that alienating Danny Masterson would alienate all those other people that are an income source, that are public relations for them, and those sort of things. So I can only assume that was a thought process on that. I now today, when knowing everything we do after the court case, after following all the news about it, the concept that they didn't just annihilate him from the very beginning and just release him is unbelievable to me. But that's back to Scientology sticking in its old ways no matter what. I mean, they still apply policies from the 1950s and 60s on how to message and how to run an organization that are completely inapplicable today. And then you have to add on to the fact that you've got some sadistic people in there that will go out of their way to hurt people, besides the policies of Scientology that say to go out of the way to hurt people. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I don't think you can apply logic to how they handled the Danny Masterson thing. I don't think you can apply logic to how they even handled it after he was convicted.
Sense.
Yeah, right. Like, now come out and say, okay, well, he's out of Scientology, we don't want anything to do with him. But no, they won't do that. They're so headstrong and illogical.
The irony is they a lot of these policies that they have in place is really to protect them, protect their image, protect the ultimate reputation and goal that Scientology has. And their actions or inaction in these areas actually make them look worse.
Yes.
So it's the ultimate irony that, if that's their ultimate goal, to do that, to protect themselves and their image and how they're viewed and, their objective at the end of the day, these methods that they're taking or these directions that they're taking are actually making them look worse.
Yeah, and they've even got family members, right, that are still probably saying, I don't think Danny was. I think it was an unfair trial. I think that it was all hearsay. There was no physical evidence, all these things. If you've been in a cult, you can understand that they may think that, because when you're in Scientology, everything on the outside is a conspiracy to get you. Everything from the government to the police to the FBI to the raids that happen on Scientology. You don't even know about the fact that Scientology infiltrated the FBI and the IRS. So the mindset is really into we're the victims, we're the underdogs. Anything bad that happens to us is because we're doing so much good that the world banks and psychiatry and psychology must just hate us. And it's a weird mindset to be in.
Right.
You really can justify so much things while you're in there, or even while you're still a parishioner. And you don't get to release that until you get out and you really see, hey, look at these Jane Does. They're good people, and they were actually harassed and they were attacked for just trying to speak up about something that happened to them. And when you see it from that point of view, you're going, that's not a conspiracy. That's victims that were attacked.
Yeah.
That's victims that were attacked by a vicious person and protected by the cult. One of the things about Scientology, one of the worst things, and I will continually say this on any live or interview I do, is the fact they cover up the crime, they attack the victim, and then the perpetrator is let to go free and operate in another area without any sort of control or information about what that person may be, and he remains to be a danger to other people. Yeah. That's one of the worst things they do.
You know what, Sterling? They call that DARVO now.
Darvo.
It's been named DARVO. It's an acronym, and I'm just going to pull it up so I can tell you exactly what it is. It applies particularly with DV, with SA, a perpetrator that is instituting some form of coercive control or manipulation to another person, which obviously it's apples to apples with Scientology, just on a much broader scale. The organization is the perpetrator doing it to the victims.
Yep.
DARVO stands for, it's an acronym for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender.
Wow. Wow.
So
Okay.
this isn't, I don't know when this was coined, not that long ago. I think in the past 10 years for sure.
Yeah.
But it's now getting recognized and, a better understanding of what coercive control is. So I think we're right at that point in time now where more and more people have a better understanding of what the power of this manipulation.
Right.
So in terms of the manipulation, one of the things that I think fascinates me is the whole view of law enforcement. Do Scientologists, because I understand how they view the outside world, we've had that conversation at great length.
Yeah.
How do they view law enforcement? And the reason why I ask is because I feel like there's such a juxtaposition between them not reporting crimes or not feeling like they are better suited to absolve or relieve a person of a particular crime over the authorities,
Right.
which speaks to a little level of narcissism, like they can do it better. The law enforcement don't mean anything.
Yeah.
But yet then they lean on law enforcement so often. I mean, look at how many times they've called law enforcement on the Squirrel Squad. They'll
Yes.
lean
Yeah.
on law enforcement when it serves them well. So that's such a juxtaposition between the view that they have by not reporting these crimes or not reaching out or utilizing law enforcement the way they should be utilized
Yeah.
for big things, but then using them sometimes. So what is the ultimate view that a current day Scientologist has on law enforcement? How much belief or weight do they put in the law
Yeah.
and the judicial system in the outside world?
Well, because I was never a Scientologist outside the Sea Org, really, as an adult at least, I don't have a view into that, but I have spoken a few times about this with family members and discussed it. Like, I was never in a position where I needed to call 911 ever while I was there.
Right.
And so I wonder how I would have reacted to that, or what I would have done in that case. Now, again, remember where I was at, I didn't have access to a phone, so I couldn't call 911.
Right.
But let's imagine something was happening. Well, it's almost not fair because I couldn't tell you that, because in the C organization of Golden Air Productions, if I saw something happen, I don't think I would consider that at the time something that could be handled by anyone but internally. It was so beaten into your head that everything's handled internally. Everything happens there. And you cannot trust the government. And a lot of what we're taught as kids there was that the judicial system is imperfect and will never get it right. And you're thinking,
Okay.
well, so
That was my
course
question
not.
then.
Yeah,
So that
yeah.
was where that was essentially what was drilled into you. The judicial system is flawed. They can't, they're useless. Is that
Yeah.
kind of the thought process?
Yes, absolutely useless. Now, what's interesting is Scientology uses, like you see, the cops so much to attack the protesters. But
Yeah.
guess who's not paying for the cop's salary?
That Scientology.
Yeah, they don't pay taxes, which is just insane to me that they answer and respond to calls so quickly for an organization that does not contribute. Now, do they personally hire these cops off duty? Yes. Do they hire them for events? Yeah, they do that. But they're also not. They're attacking taxpayers.
Yeah,
For an
absolutely.
organization that doesn't pay taxes, which is absurd in its own account. But no, in the C organization specifically, but also in Scientology, no, you're taught that you are hurting the individual, the perpetrator, if you give them over to justice to be handled. And I believe a lot of them view the Danny Masterson thing that way. But what's funny is that you're a little hypocritical, right?
Yeah.
You say that, but you had this SA guy running around for 10, 15 years committing crimes. You never fixed him. And now it finally took the bravery of a few people to come out and speak out to get this guy convicted and put in jail where he should be for something that you said. I mean, that should be something that gets people thinking a little bit. But again, I think inside the cult, they're going, no, we're just being attacked again because we're growing so much and we're such a great organization. The only reason why that happened is because they were able to sneak in and get us in that one. It's absurd, but it's cult thinking. It is absolute cult thinking. And
I know that. Sorry, keep going.
No, just on police, I never really had an interaction with them. That'd be an interesting question for Jackson, who was the security chief at Golden Air Productions, because he did deal with the police. I never once dealt with the police while I was in the C organization, but Mike Brown did, and he did an interesting video on it the other day. And I remember, Yeah, he talked about it where he bumped into a sheriff when the German news crew was there, and he walked right up to the sheriff thinking he could just talk to him. And the sheriff told him to back off, which is interesting, right? That
is interesting.
It's a perfect example of how I would have walked up to a police officer, no problem, thinking I could be right in his space and he wouldn't tell me to back up. Because we truly believe that we were that elite while we were there, that, oh, this is just a police. It's a weird sort of cult mentality, but you really did believe in the organization of Scientology. You were far superior than anyone. And that dictated your behavior towards people, including police officers, which was strange, I have to say.
So for an organization that has, I mean, L. Ron Hubbard wrote thousands and thousands and thousands of policies, which I find are more instructions about what to do versus what not to do, with the exception of like out 2D. You know, I find it's more weighted on what to do, like wash windows with newspaper. Like there is more instructions on what to do.
Yes.
Was, you know, we obviously society, the Western world, we have the justice system, we have laws, you know, essaying is against the law, you know, there's crimes that are listed. Does Scientology have, I mean, for a man that wrote so many policies, I'm shocked if he didn't write somewhere or list, include a breakdown somewhere of things that he constituted as crimes.
He did. He actually did write down crimes. But I think, and again, you know, not being a great student of Scientology, I really did not care about the subject for my last 10 years that much. He did write down crimes and high crimes. But when it comes to the subject of assault or sexual relations, he wrote these tiny little rules about sex before marriage and that, but then he didn't elaborate a whole lot after that, which I do find strange now. And again, growing up in a cult, it's like, sometimes it didn't even, you know, never even occurred because you were so in such a bubble, you didn't even realize that some things were what they were, if that makes sense. You didn't get that. You didn't get the concept. You know, all I knew was sex before marriage, horrible. You know what I mean? And you just couldn't do it. And you know, even when you had a girlfriend, when I was like 16 or 17, I had a girlfriend. It was like you couldn't do anything. You were super scared and afraid to even make, you know, body contact. You knew you could kiss and that was it. And it's weird.
So no physical touching. You can just kiss. Like
you could physically touch, but you were scared because just one little slip and that could be something far worse. And that happened to a lot of kids I knew, teenagers I knew, where there would be a touch or a slapping the butt or something along this line, and instantly that was crossing the line, which is crazy.
What would be the outcome of that?
It depended on the scenario, and depended on the person, the master at arms or the senior person in that area. But it could be anything from, I knew someone that got RPF'd, sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force for that. In my particular case, it didn't happen to me, but I knew people that they would have to do lower conditions right away. Which is crazy to think that because you brush someone's, you know, butt that you'd now be a liability to the group. It was really insane. On that particular rule. And I never understood that or how that came about or why. Some of the backstory on the ship is interesting. I think part of it came from the experiences on the Apollo with L. Ron Hubbard. But no, it's just, it's a weird environment to grow up in. And then,
well, it promotes teenagers to, you know, teenagers, you've got hormones raging through your body. You know, you want to play here and there, as you know, we all did as teenagers. You know, you don't do extreme things, but you know, you at least experiment to a certain extent and try to understand or find your own personal sexuality a bit more. It promoted marriage at a very young age.
Yes.
Which really fascinates me. And I think, you know, anybody that many of the ex-Scientologists that have discussed, yourself included, being married, the marriages didn't last, which is what a shock. I mean, if you're 16 years old getting married, what a shock. You know, even people that marry in their early 20s, I find you grow and evolve so much as a person between, you know, 20 and 30, that oftentimes couples grow apart. But it fascinates me for an organization that considers themselves a church, how they view divorce, or how nonchalant they view divorce. What does that look like if you're in Scientology and you want to divorce? You know, if you got married at 16, 2 years later, you're like, what was I doing? You know, as you would to, you know, it's not that much of a stretch, and you think this isn't going to work.
Well,
I mean, you have to get permission. What does that look like?
Well, it's different. It's different for everyone, which is very interesting. Again, I want to make sure we clarify here. So I am talking about Sea organization. So I was
Yes.
never a practicing Scientologist. You could say I was when I was a child, but I really wasn't because my parents were in the Sea Org, even though I wasn't. But I joined the Sea Org, I believe, at the age of 10. So I was a Sea Org member until I was 30 years old. So I didn't have any. In Scientology, you can date. You can have sexual relations before marriage. It's in the Sea
Right.
organization where that is a
Oh,
major. Yeah.
I didn't realize that, Sterling. I'm so glad you said that.
Yep.
For some reason, I had kind of like blanketed that
Yep. No.
policy across all. So public Scientologists, they didn't have to abide by those rules. But
No,
Sea Org-
though they did frown upon promiscuity. So if someone was sleeping around too much and they got a report of it, they would consider that a indicator of bad behavior. And that is written
well,
by
that's
Ellen Hubbard
fresh
in the ethics
when you
book.
consider Danny Masterson. That's
Right?
fresh.
Absolutely.
Like what?
Yeah.
Where does just
Same
anyways,
rules don't apply to celebrities. Same rules do not apply to celebrities. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me. I
Yeah.
have a totally random question
Shoot.
that I've always been afraid to ask because this terrifies me. And for any of the women that are watching right now, I'm sure you're going to feel exactly the same way. Is it true that you are expected to have complete silence when delivering a baby?
You know, I don't know if the word expected works. I know that it was suggested. And then everything you read about Scientology, you would think, well, why wouldn't you? Because any suggestion during the painful moment of birth, and believe me, I don't know how painful birth is. I would never pretend to know the pain that a woman
Right.
goes through during birth. But you're only being silent because you're going to protect the baby from getting any sort of
Engrams or something, isn't it?
exactly
Engrams?
words, engrams that might stimulate or create some sort of
Traumatize
condition in the child later on.
Right.
Yeah. So that is
But
that
yet
is the premise behind that.
you also can't like get an epidural.
I don't know about that. They frown heavily on drugs, but I don't
Right.
know if an epidural crosses that line. That would be an interesting question for somebody. I would not know
Yeah.
about that.
Or
Yeah.
like pain medication, like
Yeah.
how do Scientologists view, if a Sea Org member breaks their leg, or a public Scientologist, like if you're in a car accident and you are in serious pain, how do Scientologists view a doctor prescribing pain medication? Or if those that have, unfortunately, there's been a lot of Scientologists that were diagnosed with cancer and have since deceased, especially celebrities. There's been a lot. I'm sure there's a lot more that we don't know about that aren't
Right.
celebrities.
Yeah.
Are they allowed to take pain medication?
They are. I'm sure that there's a little bit of depending on how heavy that medication is and the person's personality, I'm sure
Mhm.
they do some monitoring of that. I don't think you can do Scientology processing when you're on those medications. So of course, if someone gets in an accident and they need painkillers, I mean, you just need painkillers. That's
Yeah,
not
for sure.
that's a fact. I'm sure they let them take those, but I think they monitor that quickly because again, you can't progress any further if you keep taking painkillers.
Right.
And that would be kind of apparent to them at the time. But I don't know how they monitor that. I never had any connection with that. I mean, I broke my back when I fell out of a tree once when I was there, and I was out for 3 weeks, and I remember getting maybe Advil, maybe a little bit, but otherwise I was on bed rest, and
Right.
I could barely move unless I got in the water when I was able to move more. So I can't even remember what painkiller I took at that time, but I believe I just had Advil, and I obviously could have had a much better painkiller than Advil,
Yeah.
considering I snapped a vertebra on one of my lumbar.
Wow.
But I healed up pretty quickly. So yeah, it's an interesting question. It's again, I think it's different for every person. But even today, I'll only take an Advil if I'm in extreme pain.
Right.
Most of the times I'm going to do something to remedy it, whether it means a stretch or massage or hot bath, or I mean, I just don't like taking that sort of stuff. But that could just be me. But
And
that
I'm
is,
certainly not promoting pain medication here.
Yeah.
I'm just, there are certain circumstances where it is highly more likely that you should have some form of pain management, especially delivering a baby. Like, I am really curious if it's frowned upon by Scientology to take any form of pain medication during the pregnancy to avoid these engrams and to not to have an epidural. Like, I know now I would be silent during that delivery.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have to be batshit crazy to think that I'm going to be, you know,
Yeah.
I haven't had kids, but I could just imagine how painful that is.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what to say about that. I can't imagine being that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of female Scientologists that have done this,
Yeah.
that have stayed completely silent. I'm not sure. Like, do they get a gold star after they get out of the hospital? Like, does Scientology send them like a little mini trophy?
Something, a participation award. I don't know how that goes, but you know, it's funny you mentioned the thing about the painkillers and the drugs, because I can only imagine as I was a kid, a young adult,
Yeah.
you know, 21 to 30 while I was there. And I only say that because that's when I'm of age to start even knowing what a painkiller was. Because again,
Yeah.
like these things that just don't, when you're in a bubble, some of these things don't ever occur to you. But you know, there had to be elderly people there that were on painkillers or needed some sort of assistance just to make it through the day. And I'm wondering how many did that, how many were on painkillers, but I just never knew about it because that would never be a conversation you would have.
Right.
I would never have a conversation with an older adult that would go, oh yeah, you know, by the way, I took 2 Advil, or I'm on, you know, Vicodin because my injury, my knee's killing me. Never even occurred. Not once did I have that conversation with a single person.
You know, and to a certain extent, Sterling, that in and of itself is abuse.
Yes, it is.
You know, that could constitute abuse. It makes me really sad for especially the elderly. You know, when Mike Brown has talked about his mom Rosemary and how they have, what do they call them? Medical liaison.
Yes.
You know, they're not even trained people. They're essentially just a PR person that can talk and communicate with the doctors to keep you silenced so that you're not expressing, you know, the conditions that you're being held in or that you have to endure. For a senior citizen, you know, it's heartbreaking to me.
And let's remember that a lot of things in Scientology are an afterthought, and medical care is one of them. It's a hindrance. It's something that they have to do, but would rather not do it. They're really about dragging out as much production as they can from a Sea Org member and using them as long as they can until they're useless, and they put them out to pasture. It really is. And that's what makes it a trafficking cult, is that they will use you until you're no longer usable. But everything they do with you is at a complete minimum, like only if necessary. There's no thought of nutrition or how can we take care of this, or should this, I don't, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that was there, but I didn't get a blood test once while I was there. I didn't know anyone that did get a blood test while they were there. That's something you would be doing on a regular basis to make sure everything's balanced, everything's correct. The stress
or annual exams, like you know, they say, I think the age is for men over 50, you should every 2 years, you know, get certain tests done, and same for women. You know, is there an in-house doctor at the orgs? Like, do women get a pap test once a year?
I couldn't speak to them on that. That'd be interesting to find out from again, we're talking about Sea Organization, not Scientology, because in Scientology you live out in the real world, still in a bubble, but at least you have access
more
to
likely they're doing that out.
Yeah, they're likely doing that. In the Sea Organization, all I can say from my experience is the medical care was a bare minimum. It was only what they needed to do. They were not going to spend another cent. And as we've now seen from Mike Brown's wonderful videos about his mom, is if you were to do the math and go, well, if they're just using you as long as they can to get the most out of you, how are they going to treat you at an older age? Well, Rosemary's story is an exact example of what they're going to do. And it was one of my big worries, and one of the things I think we need to bring a lot more attention to is that these people aging out, my parents and the like, they're not going to get proper treatment. They're possibly going to get credit cards and lines of credit taken out in their name so that Scientology can make more money. They're not going to take care of these guys. But you know how easy it would be for them to do that? They could easily hire 4 to 5 full-time nurses, buy a few buildings, and then make the rest of these guys' lives just really sweet and nice, and let them live out the rest of their lives at least happy. But they won't do that because they're a controlling cult that is only after one thing. And
they're blinded by that motive. They're blinded by
benefits from Scientology and gets money from Scientology. In my opinion, having known the person and been there, is David Miscavige. He lives like a multi-millionaire.
Yeah, it's gross.
No one else does. No one else. There's little perks other people get for sure. Small perks, not really good ones. That dude lives like a multi-millionaire. And that's wrong in so many ways. That guy gets medical. He gets a chiropractor every week. Okay. Colonics every week and whatever he wants. He's getting $200 haircuts. You know what I mean? I've talked about it before. Yeah.
And, when we had our last conversation, Sterling, I had brought up, like in my business life, in the corporate world, for any kind of campaign that you're doing, you come up with a strategic business plan on how you're going to do it. So that's the way my mind works. So when I think of, exposing Scientology for their elderly abuse, their fraudulent behavior, their human trafficking, all of these things, I think, how can we, like, the SPTV is amazing because it's super informative, but how can we now broaden that? So we talked a little bit about hashtags, and I've received so many messages. In fact, from every one of our videos, I can't keep up on some of the emails that I get from people with different thoughts on things. So I've actually been putting together some options for 5 different really hard-hitting hashtags. And I'll share it with you, and you can share it with anybody in SPTV, because you guys are the minds behind it. I'm just a vehicle to be able to help come up with these things, but you guys can help with if you think the words would be hard hitting, and then share it with the SPTV never-inners, that every time they post something on Twitter, you can include these hashtags. We could start getting these things trending. So that it gets a little bit more visibility, and then hopefully it kind of forces the FBI and the powers that be to start investigating a little bit more, and hopefully getting David Miscavige on a RICO and removing his tax exemption and having all the buildings sold, and Foster and Barbara and all of these people that are victims and stuck in there right now saved and, allowed to live the last portions of their lives as free individuals rather than indoctrinated.
Let them spend it with their family and their loved ones, because in my family, in Foster's family, and Barbara's family, who I'm still in contact with, they would like nothing else but to just see him come out, and he could go from house to house, from state to state, just hanging and living with his family, and everyone would be completely happy for that, and really want to do that. But that brings me back to the point. There's a few reasons why SPTV exists, and besides being news, information, let's not forget the healing factor of it. Let's not forget the information that may help topple Scientology by getting their tax exempt status removed. And let's talk about protecting the children that are still there, and also the elders that are still there, and getting those people out so they can live a decent life. Those are what it is. And no matter what content we do on here, whether it's fun content, whether it's something we laugh or talk about that's healing, or whether we're talking about serious subjects, all the content gets eyes looking at it. I know a lot of people in the chat and a lot of people that follow these channels do enjoy the content where they get to see people who've left and survived the cult actually be happy and get along and do different things. I think that's valuable as much as the news and everything else that is part of SPTV. And that's one thing that and I've said it many times, that I respect Aaron for, is that when he started doing the videos and he came out, he pushed those sort of things. He kind of opened SPTV to be a myriad of different activities that all contribute to the same thing, because they really do all contribute in their own unique, special way. And that's why we continue to do it. And I think it's unbelievably informationally. And can you imagine leaving today and now you have these channels, this content to look at, to help you sort out? Because a lot of people that have just left, even friends of mine that have just left, it's hard to communicate how hard it is to deal with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Especially
it's a classic symptom, Sterling, of any form of abuse or trauma that, a child or teenager or an adult might experience. Oftentimes, they don't say anything at all because they feel like they're alone.
Yep.
There are no, I'm the only victim. Similarly with the victims of Danny Masterson, they had no idea that there were other victims.
Right.
They thought they were there alone. So I can imagine similarly with ex-Scientologists, from Reese getting a fax machine thrown at her, or Miriam, the stuff that happened to Miriam with her father. All of these stories are so broad. Yeah. And I can imagine that same kind of prison prison that you have in your mind, where you think I'm the only one and you don't speak up. And just the beauty of SPTV, like, it actually makes me tear up to think about the strength of SPTV and what you guys have all done, coming together, sharing your individual stories. And this is going to sound like a bit of a stretch, but I just had this conversation earlier today. We all know about World War II. We've seen Schindler's List. We've seen all of the movies. In the past year, less than that, maybe 10 months, there have been so many shows like All the Light I Can See on Netflix, Masters of the Air that's on Apple right now. There's another brand new one that's on, The New Look on Apple TV, which is about Christian Dior and Coco Chanel, about the fashion world. But I was shocked when I started watching it because it was about World War II and how those people were impacted, like fashion designers in World War II. The past year, we're suddenly seeing this broader glimpse of World War II. I have absorbed so many documentaries and watched so many victims and survivors of World War II speak and share their stories. I thought I had a pretty decent grasp. I have so many books on it, Sterling. Yeah. I have learned more about World War II in the past year from all of these different perspectives of World War II than I ever have.
Right.
And that's kind of how I view, I know it's a really stretch of a comparison. That's kind of how I view SPTV. I thought I knew a lot about Scientology, because we've talked about before, I got addicted to it when I was 14, wanted to know everything I could about it. I just absorbed every documentary book that I could come across.
Yeah.
And I've learned more because everybody's individual perspective views Scientology through a different lens. They're going to be impacted differently, whether that's a business owner, a public business owner, whether that's a child, a second generation, third generation, even a first generation Scientologist. Everybody's perspective is going to be so different. And I think the SPT world kind of brings and unites all of you guys together to share your individual stories, to add some kind of nuance to the full scope of what Scientology actually is and the harm that it actually does. It's so much broader.
I agree. And I think even people like me who were there almost my whole life, I'm learning things I did not know. A ton of things I did not know because I was in an ultra bubble up at Golden Era Productions. I was disassociated from all other parts of Scientology by that factor. But then you have people that were at Flag Land Base. You have Aaron Smith Levin, who was in an actual service org, much different experience. You've got Reese, who worked at Kansas City org, whose father was a Scientologist. There are so many different aspects. I mean, I'm on a daily basis learning more and more about what happened down, because when I first left, I thought, it really just kind of happened mostly at Golden Era Productions. Things were bad there. I don't think it trickled down that far, but there were other things that trickled down, other behaviors. Like when I hear about Reese's and Kelly's father, and to the extent they went to abuse their own children mentally, and I think physically too a couple times. I'm not sure. I don't want to state for them, but the mental abuse because of the power that Scientology gave them to control their own children, and the fact that they were themselves probably antisocial people, but they took it out on their own kids and used Scientology as a tool to do that. That frustrates me. That frustrates me. Like when I hear those sort of things, I'm like, I can't even believe it. Like there's no way. No. I agree. I think SPTV covers so many different facets. It's such a good source of information, and it's just going to continue to snowball. And hey, look, David Miscavige got served, if I'm correct.
I know,
which is fantastic. Hey, we're looking at something's going to happen there. That's going to be painful for sure. Absolutely,
I'm elated to hear that. And I really, the words from the judge were just sweet. Just as he's like, this is ridiculous. Like, come on, it's just belittled. Can you imagine the narcissist that Dave Miscavige is? How he would have felt reading those words?
Yep.
The all-powerful Dave Miscavige.
Dude, if that guy actually makes it into court, I will be there that day in Los Angeles. I will be there that day to greet him outside the courthouse. And let
You'll have to stream outside,
Sterling,
Sterling, and give us all updates because that will be a beautiful.
Let's show up to that one.
Yeah.
All right, let's do some questions real quickly if you want to. All right, let's pull them up. Okay, so first, here we go. Casey, thank you so much. What's 1984 creepy to me is the checks that are done on people. Aaron said he got called for being friends with Jenna on Facebook. I don't even know who's on my Facebook follow. Yes, Casey, that is correct. It is actually creepy, and it's actually something I brought up to Chris. I brought that up to my dad one time when I had first gone to Saudi and I came back, and my little brother had been moved back to LA, and my mom and dad came to have a meeting. My dad had come to that meeting with information about who my friends were on Facebook, and he did not have a Facebook account. And so I pointed out to him right then and there. I said, "Hey, do you not see the creepiness that you as my father are getting fed information from OSA about my connections on Facebook, that means the organization that you work for is spying on your own son, on your own family member, and you're bringing the information to me thinking you're helping me with it. They're spending tax dollars to spy on your own child, and you're okay with it. Nevertheless, that conversation didn't go that well, but no, it's super creepy. I cannot believe the correlations between 1984 and Scientology. It's a series I'm going to be doing with Miriam Francis. We've discussed it quite a bit, actually, and I can't wait to do it with her because the comparisons are unbelievable. Unbelievable. Thank you, Casey, for your question.
That tattletale kind of ethos that Scientology has is the core foundation operating system that they have that keeps it functioning. Everybody keeps everybody in line because, you know, people are, you can't say anything out loud if somebody hears you and reports it, you know, do you know what I mean? That kind of tattletale system is very, very effective.
Yes.
Very
and as I like to point out for Aaron while he was there, he was a master report writer.
Oh, was he really?
Which is why, I'd like to tease him about it all the time. I'm like, dude, like I hated writing knowledge reports. I thought it was such a distraction. He was apparently a master at it. But then if you know Aaron, he's got that sort of mind and detail, you know, which I tease him about, but also makes him so good at what he does. So here we go. All right. SP Tattoo Warrior. Question. When do you want to have lunch with Reese and the rest of us? Hey, anytime. If you guys are in LA, let me know. I'll meet up with you guys. I'm hoping to do content with Reese. The schedule between football, rainstorms, Reese traveling to Florida, she's now in Seattle, have made it so that I can't do any lives with her. And I'm hoping to do that in the next week or next Sunday or maybe this Wednesday. So I would really like to do that.
We missed game night, Sterling.
Yes, we have to do that again too.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, and I know your viewers. Everybody comments on the game night, and when are you doing it again? So
they're fun. I really enjoy them. Yeah, we got to do it again. I love games too. Emily Blythe. Hi everyone. I only pulled this up because I'm wondering if we're related. Blythe is my mom's maiden name. But anyways, there you go. Okay. Lydia Von Stretchclaw comment. Yet they can dredge up the arbitration clause, and this is in regards to the suppressive person orders, and And in regard to
just the juxtaposition between when they choose to avail of authorities and when they don't.
Yes, absolutely.
I think you know they'll use the justice system when they want. You know what I mean? Like, or sorry, am I reading that? I assume that's what.
Yes, no, you're totally right, and that's what it's talking about. They will. They play the system. They play the system very well. But the judge that issued the comment about Dave Miscavige. He realized they're playing this game. He shut that down. Guys, if you haven't seen that video, go to Aaron's channel. It's really fantastic. Aaron reads the exact verbiage from, and I'm assuming that the people on here haven't seen Aaron's channel. Of course, most of you guys are from Aaron's channel, but it's really good. It kind of gets you to want to stand up in your chair and clap at the end.
You know what I loved about it, Sterling?
Yeah.
David Miscavige actually signed that he was acknowledging that he was served.
Yeah.
So the job was done. It was done and dusted. The judge didn't need to do anything, but he took it upon himself to write it all up anyways.
Yes.
I mean, if that doesn't speak volumes, I mean, judges are busy people.
Yeah.
They don't have time to just willy-nilly, you know, write up something that's unnecessary, you know, that it doesn't serve any purpose at all. David Miscavige has already acknowledged in writing that he has accepted that he was served. So just the fact that that judge continued, it's just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
It is a beautiful thing. I agree. Victoria CSD question. What are the ADE steps? What are the actual steps? Oh man. Sorry. Never done them. Never would do them. Don't know exactly what they are. I think you can look it up. But just to answer your question, they're absurd. They're ridiculous. Yeah. They're making someone that's left. Most people leave the C organization or Scientology because of abuse. So then to think that the abused person has to go back and petition or ask to get back is insane, along with the freeloader debt, along with the conditions they want you to do, wouldn't have anything to do with it. It was insane to me. Blake Reed, how you doing? Thanks for the super chat. Hey, Sterling, good to see you back. Adam, worried about you. Thank you so much, Blake. I appreciate that. Hopefully I'm going to start doing a little more content here. Everyone's been quite busy, but yeah, I am back and happy to be here with Krista, to be honest with you. Okay. Victoria, CSD, question Sterling. How did you deprogram or get yourself out of the cult mindset, especially since you were indoctrinated very young? That's an interesting question. I think that could be a whole video in itself. You know, it depends how you define cult mindset. So again, as I've stated, besides when I was very young, I didn't really do a whole lot of Scientology in my teen years or in my 20s up to my 30s. I was slowly moving away from Scientology itself and just kind of wanted to do my job and be successful at what I was doing.
I did actually have a question, Sterling, that we could maybe
it.
touch on this the next time that we meet.
That would be a great question. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm curious about are, you know, a lot of the Scientology policies become kind of just your go-to everyday your everyday operating system. Did have you noticed any particular policies, even the most generic ones, that have you caught yourself doing? Even 5 years later, 10 years later, that you came to recognize, whoa, that is actually Scientology. I mean, even the most mundane things, which I think is a big part of deprogramming yourself, recognizing, is this just me or is this just Scientology indoctrination?
Yeah. To answer your question, policies, no. Because I always thought that that his policies on how to manage were absurd. I didn't like reading them. We were made to word clear them. I hated doing the word clearing. Behaviors, yes.
Yes, sorry, I guess I should have been clear. I meant
behaviors, yes. Like the fact that,
or how you viewed the world.
Yes.
You know what I mean? How?
Yeah, the fact that anyone that countered me, I thought was really trying to hurt me and get after me, and I could never separate that. That fact made life really hard on me. The fact that when you were angry or had someone that you were in disagreement with, they had to be your enemy rather than something you could actually sort out, something that could rather easily sort out. Behaviors like that have not served me, and I believe they come from Scientology and being raised. Also, the hyper defensiveness, because in Scientology, or the C organization specifically, Golden Air Productions or organization, when you're wrong, that meant a lot. That meant either lower conditions, rehabilitation project force, being disconnected from your family, your friends. So being wrong had a big price tag on it. And so when you come out, you're very defensive about what you've said, what you did, and you kind of have to hold tight to things because you're worried you'll lose them. And I was always worried I would lose something that I had gained. And that is part of it. So for me, it was more behaviors, not the policy, because I'd already kind of realized the policy was not something that I needed to follow. I didn't think it worked. I didn't think it was effective. I even had an aversion to it, like I said, whether it be uniforms or keeping a stat graph, all these things. I was just like, no, thank you. Not doing that. I'm not writing up a formula if my stats, if I was less productive 1 week from the next. So I kind of got rid of that stuff pretty quickly and actually worked at getting rid of the vocabulary very quickly. I would find all the words that were cult related, and I would replace them slowly and try to make a point to not use them at all. So
I think it would be a really fascinating video, Sterling. Like if if over the course of the next week or 2 weeks or what, at your leisure, if you were to really give that some thought about some of those behaviors that you did find, which ones you noticed fairly quickly, which ones took some time to notice, because I think it would be helpful for the never-inners to have an understanding of the root of that particular behavior, because it is directly linked to Scientology. And then, talking a little bit about the benefits or the personal growth from, the benefits that you have in your life now that you've been able to kind of park that perhaps defensiveness or, just whatever the behavior may be. I think it would be helpful for the never-inners.
Absolutely.
Just to put it out there.
It's part of the healing thing. And then I can talk, of course, again, Victoria, CSD, great question. One of the things to deprogram that, again, and is one of the reasons why I started my channel, is the aspect of doing those things that you love, because you weren't allowed to do those there. So forcing yourself to do those things you love, forcing yourself not to be controlled by your schedule or having to be somewhere, having that freedom to do nothing helps with the anxiety that was built up from always having to do something. I know a lot of people that can't sit still, that have to always be busy. And I've learned, and some people get frustrated when they vacation with me, I will take a book at a very nice resort and I will sit at the pool all day drinking margaritas and reading my book. And I'll be like, oh, do you want to come do an excursion? I'm like, nope, I'm going to sit right here and do absolutely nothing just for the purpose
for
of
you.
doing absolutely nothing.
Good for you.
Yeah. So it's fun. Thank you. Great question, by the way. Thank you so much. Victor. Oh, again, silence when giving birth, but yelling is standard when serial members talk to their juniors. Absurd. I know. Yeah. Absurd. Yes, and true. Lydia von Stretchko, I had to pull this up. Thank you so much. I wish anyone the best.
Actually, I'm so
Thank you, Mr.
sorry.
Migraine. Yeah. What?
This just got me thinking too. This is another thing that I don't understand. If babies that are born,
Mhm.
you know, if that is a reincarnated Scientologist that's like zooming around up in, you know, La La Land going, oh, there's some Scientology parents that are going to come through, and they skip the kind of, what's that,
In between lives implant. Yep.
implant station. They skip that. So they're able to retain the Scientology training, or the, you know, that whether they're clear or going up the bridge that they've had before. Why would an engram at birth, like a woman screaming, impact a baby?
So true. So
It
true.
makes no sense to me.
Well, I think he wrote it in 1950 in Dianetics was the first time that was mentioned. So there was no reincarnated Scientologist at the time.
Oh, I see.
But then Scientology, of course, can't change, won't change, and continues to apply the same policies, even though we know so much more about the human mind and the brain than any point in the last, 40,000 years. Scientology still is 100% applicable, and it works, which is just crazy, because it can't. I mean, you can't. If you look at technology today, we really know we can spot things. It's like the thing that Jamie suggests that Mike Brown's looking into doing, and other people looking into doing with the nervous system. That's because of science. That's real. That's true. Now, I haven't done it, but when Jamie talks about the people that are using it, the military and stuff, you got to go, okay, that's probably a very valid procedure. And, and Jamie's bringing it up to this whole space as a gracious offer to people to do it, and will absolutely help you get connected to the right people to make that happen, which is also unbelievable. And, that's the type of person Jamie is. He's a great guy. All right. Christopher Malin. There is actually a reference on taking aspirin if you have a headache, written by LRH. There you go.
Oh.
There you go. I don't remember that, but hey.
Hey, Chris, I just noticed that's, hi. Yeah. I talked about you earlier, Chris. I've got, I'll be chatting with Chris later this week. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. And by the way, Lori Plays and Witness, thank you so much for being the moderator in here. I appreciate that. I don't always thank you guys, but I thank you for being here. Really, really do. You guys are amazing. Atkins in Texas, one of my favorites. Encouraging everyone here to write letters and make phone calls to your reps in Congress. They read them. Phone calls work. You can do it, even if you're an introvert. Quiet protest. That's a great point. You can even give them links to the YouTube channels, to Aaron's channel, to anyone that you feel is delivering a message that you want them to get. Give them links to that, because they may open their eyes even more. And I think that's a fantastic point.
Or if there's specific things, because I understand that that city officials or the authorities might not have the time to be able to sit and watch a 1 hour long video, especially for something they haven't opened an investigation on yet. There, you just clip it. For those that are familiar with YouTube, you can clip certain sections. If there's something particular, a 10-minute, point that you think is really important to share, clip that 10-minute video and send that off. Look at me talking Scientology, Sterling. I mean, what's it called? Technology. I don't even know what I'm doing with technology, but I know how to clip videos.
And Lydia, by the way, Lydia von Stretchko, thank you so much as well. I know that you're a mod in here as well, so thank you so much. Atkins in Texas. Treating elderly people as subhuman is unacceptable, unconscionable, and criminal. I agree so much. So much. The message that Mike Brown brought about Rosemary, everything about that situation is really just abominable. It's so bad, and it's something that I think needs to be addressed right away, and something I think you can see. If the FBI were to raid the Blue Building in Scientology or any other SEER bases, and they found elderly women or men stacked up in 3 high bunks in a tiny room with no air conditioning, I think that would make it pretty obvious that they're dealing with a cult and something needs to be done. So, I hope they open their eyes to that one. Okay. Victoria CSD question. When an org shuts down, what happens to the staff? I have no clue what happens to staff. I'm assuming they get either brought back for training or put into another organization. You're talking about Scientology organizations. I wouldn't know. But I'm sure because they're still under contract, they're gonna try to use that contract somewhere else and get the most they can out of them. All right, here we go. Asun K comment, growing up in Germany, we got pounded in school about World War II. So many details of the Church of Scientology have similar aspects like the Hitler Jugend. Do you know what Jugend is?
I don't know.
Okay. Cut ties to parents, brainwash them to good little soldiers. Yeah, I agree.
Yes, I know it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a hell of a lot of correlation that like similarities between
Hitler's youth. I mean, everything like that. Yeah, there's so many. Marching. I mean, it is a copy in a lot of ways. Believing that you're the best group of humans in the world. Also, I mean, there's so many. That's why history is important. It's also why they didn't teach us history in Scientology. I want to point that out. Mike Brown's talked about the education at the ranch, which was very subpar. They did not teach us history.
Well, it can't be that much of a stretch either that L. Ron Hubbard's, the inception of Scientology was what, 15 years after World War II ended. It's not, to me, that makes perfect sense that his understanding, he would have drawn upon some of the things that he saw that were effective with how successful the Hitler movement was at that time.
Right.
That he would have drawn upon some of those indoctrination processes, especially with the Hitler youth, for sure.
I absolutely believe that. Okay, that was the end of the questions we had in there. Let me just check to see if we had any more. Let's see. Yeah, okay. This is a good question. Maria Martin's question, how come if Scientology numbers are dropping so hard, they still need to place several bunk beds per room? Scientology's numbers are dropping hard. The Sea Org numbers, I'm not sure how much they're dropping, but we do know, based on the children that are out here speaking, or the former children that are out here speaking, there's a lot of our parents are still in there. And those parents are getting up into their 70s and 80s. And that's why they still, look at, again, elderly are an afterthought in the Sea organization. Yeah. Okay, that's not the same as Scientology. Scientology, if you have an elderly Scientology person, they're in the real world. They're going to get medical care. If they have the money, they're going to do what they can with that. I can't speak to that. But in the Sea organization, no matter what, they are never going to make sure you're super comfortable, ever. They're never going to go out of their way to make something particularly nice for you. And when you become less and less useful to them, you're thrown by the wayside. That's just a fact. It's an unfortunate fact, but it is a fact. You need no other proof other than how Rosemary Chickwalk was treated. And we're talking about a sweet, sweet, sweet lady that was treated that way. And not that it matters on your temperament or your personality, but I think that's the worst case scenario. That's one end of the spectrum. Absolutely.
Well, and also the role that Rosemary held. The role that she held within Scientology staff was pretty high up. She was very well respected. If Scientology can treat Rosemary that way, imagine how they could treat the person that runs the kitchen, or you know what I mean? Not to denigrate those roles, but just the role that Rosemary had, the people that she serviced, were higher up. And if they can treat Rosemary that way, it makes me ill to imagine how a lot of the elderly people are treated, let alone the fraud, the credit card fraud, let alone that.
Yeah, I mean, that in itself, right? I mean, can you imagine putting someone into debt at that level? I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I do have one which I have to answer from Blake Reed. I hope you got your tickets to the early showing of Dune 2. Guys, if you haven't seen Dune, it's an unbelievable movie written by a true science fiction author. Not a pseudo science fiction author that also created a religion. But yes, Blake, absolutely. I cannot wait for Dune 2 to come out. It's going to be a fantastic movie. Thank you for everyone that tuned in today. Krista, thank you for being back here again. If it's okay with you, we're going to continue these conversations. Yeah, they're fun. I love your idea about getting the hashtag thing going and having more attention. Because again, anything we do in this field, SPTV, anything we do that brings more eyeballs in, doesn't matter how they get in, doesn't matter how our channels pop up on their stuff. Just people watching and getting in spreads the message. Because if you watch a video from me, you're going to end up watching a video from Aaron, or you're going to end up watching a video from Laura, or you're going to end up watching a video from anyone. And if that's the thing you watch and that's the thing that fires you up, then that's a good thing. And so I think any sort of content we do is going to contribute to that. And it's also healing for people.
And I'm certainly not saying that any hashtags that I come up with are the ones we should go. Really, I mean, we could change them every week. I just recognize that if we want to get it trending, we need numbers using it. So all of us that are watching, everybody, all the never-inners, all the SPTV community, everybody needs to just make a decision. This is what we're going to use for the next 30 days. Let's flood everything. Let's get it trending on all platforms and see if that has any effect at all. And if they don't, we can switch up and choose the next 5 different hashtags. It's just being a little bit strategic about it and doing like a 6-month kind of plan for how to get this in the eyes of the right people. Those tweets, like those tweets on X or posts, they could also be sent to your city officials. And you can tag city officials in those, and then all of a sudden their names are attached to a hashtag that's trending. It's just a way to get it a little bit more public. So if anybody has ideas, my email is on my page. Send it through to me. And yeah, we'll keep working on that, because I have received so many emails, Sterling, saying, please don't stop with the hashtags. Please do that. So not that I want to take on this job, but I don't mind, it is what it is. I don't mind. I can make some suggestions. And if any of the viewers have suggestions, we can come up with 5 really effective ones and then just put it out and see if everybody can use it, and we can put an end date on it, and we can reconvene after that. See if it works.
I agree. And let's not forget how important it is that Dave Miscavige has been served in a lawsuit, whether it's a criminal lawsuit, any type of lawsuit where that guy has to make an appearance and can be perjured is a good thing, and is a step towards holding him accountable, holding Scientology accountable, removing their tax-exempt status, and stopping them from continuing to perpetrate crimes against youth and elder at the same time. Thank you so much, guys. We will see you next Sunday, most likely. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?